Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am Amar, and together with Tauros, we will now start today's lesson. So sit down and listen. Topic will be teachers in VNs. So better focus. It will be on the test. Tauros Sensei, you may begin education.
Yes, class. Today we're going to be learning about one classical archetype in visual novels and anime and other weep adjacent hobbies and material, is that of the teacher character role. Now, there are all sorts of teachers and all sorts of visual novel titles. And one interesting thing to point out about them is that sometimes they tend to show up as, I guess you could say, romanceable heroines in certain kinds of high school setting, eroge materials. What are your initial thoughts about that, Emar?
Why do you have to immediately lay it on me? My thoughts on the teacher route is they suck, all of them.
Harsh.
I have not yet gotten to a teacher route I would be content. Every time something is lacking, and the characters themselves tend to be, I'll admit from the titles I've read, tend to be the worst in a given title.
Goodness gracious.
But maybe a few examples that I will elaborate later down. But the one archetype that I tend to run into, both in anime and VNs, is a teacher that is presented in a route or something, but it's an archetype of teacher that, she's unmarried and she's lonely and she's kind of a goofball, but she's kind of odd, but she's kind of, how can I say, desperate, and it keeps reappearing, that archetype. Probably the one that springs to my mind when I describe it is Mareeck from Movie of Extra. It's just so. And the only archetype that's even worse than that is the teacher or a member of a staff that teases the first one about it. And again, we have an example from Movie of Extra with the other one. I completely now spaced on the name. It was Mareeck and the second Yoko.
Yes, because 29 years old and unmarried is too old, and we get all of the desperate jokes and all of that.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes that's all their personality is being desperate and being a pushover, and someone teases that character all the time, and that's the whole personality become that.
Now,
this is overused, and I keep running into that.
Yeah, Love Love Extra was pretty bad about that, yeah, in that sense. And Love Love Unlimited and Alternative did a lot to prepare both of their characters and flesh it out in many other directions.
That's the second part.
Oh, a second part.
That's the second part I wanted to allude in specifically why I chose Movie of Extra, because those characters is so much better in Alternative and Unlimited. Oh my god. Mareeck specifically is such a good instructor, such a great development for that character. Oh my god. Even in side stories, when she's the first time instructor, I don't remember precisely what the side story about. It's about the Valkyrie squadron she was coaching. Holy hell, is that a good side story with Mareeck as a forefront. Oh my god.
Especially because in Extra, she has that same kind of, I suppose you could say, outer shell, that as a teacher, she's professional and serious and is trying to educate the class about whatever teachings of are the day. But when you get into Unlimited and Extra, how she's far more of a military commander, and she's so much more believable, I guess much more serious as an educator in that role, while still having, her normal personality when she's, off the clock, when she's not leading a classroom. The times you see her, whether it's a personal words of encouragement or just in the free time. And I mean, we still see that with Marimo in Extra, but it feels so much more two-dimensional. And I don't know if that's simply just because there's a lot of potential that was untapped in Extra, or if that's just how the rom-com nature of Love Extra just has to go for a whole bunch of characters. But either way, I agree with you. I did like her in particular a lot more in Unlimited and Alternative. You kind of had to for the story to work out, right?
True, exactly. She becomes very endearing, even if she acts like a hardass a lot of the time. But after the side story specifically, you understand why. It fills a purpose. So it's so good in Unlimited Alternative. Oh god. I could spend hours why this is so much better, and it gets ruined in my mind because that's an extra portrayal. And I'm like, ugh, no. Yeah.
One other thing I tend to see.
I do have a flip side.
Oh my god, there's more layers.
I have a flip side.
MR is like, oh, we are dig deeping. Because he has thought a ton about this.
No, not about Movlov specifically. So if you want to add to that, I can give you the advice now. I just wanted to set a stage. I tend not to like the potential love interest teacher characters, even if they don't have a route, but still have that gag joke of, oh yeah, I'm lonely and desperate, right? I don't tend to not like it. But there is one role that consistently I like teachers in VNs in. Antagonists.
Uh-huh. A teacher as the antagonist.
Multiple times. Yes. Multiple times when I read the VN, in which the teacher is your direct antagonist or a foil, they fit that role perfectly. Again, from the titles I've read. One example that comes to my mind is Princess Evangel, in which the protagonist is thrusted in an all-girls school, and the teacher is trying to expose him in a different way. So she's literally an obstacle for him to pass the approval for co-ed school next semester. And holy hell, is that a good role for that character. So in that aspect, I love to hate that character, and you know what? It fulfills that role perfectly.
Okay, that's interesting. Is this like a twist or something you know right off the bat? How does that develop where you have...
Very right off the bat.
Really? Someone who's been some sort of teacher or mentor to the main character, and yet it warps into being a villain.
Okay, that also happens, but not necessarily in Princess Evangel. In Princess Evangel, since the protagonist is joining an all-girls school, that teacher becomes a foil to him, right? Specifically. So that's a new person he interacts with that starts their interaction with being quite negative, and she persists of being an obstacle for him all the time. Now, a twist that has teachers as an antagonist later, I've also read those, and those are really cool characters. But in order not to reveal the twist, I don't want to say what the title was precisely, okay?
Okay. That's a very interesting way to think about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How to approach a teacher character from the developer's point of view, I guess.
Exactly. That's not something that easily comes to mind, right? Because the teacher tends to be the caretaker, the mentor guidance, not necessarily an obstacle for you to overcome.
Mm-hmm. Although, well, of course, there's one thing to say at the beginning, is that the whole teacher aspect is a part of fiction. And in real life, there's all the power dynamics, and there's like the usually in a school setting, there's below the age of consent and all of that. It's one of those things, again, real life, very no, very bad. However, in fiction, and especially, I guess in the Japanese culture, weeb sort of things, this sort of thing tends to become more present. And some titles take it a lot more fictionalized and romanticized, and some go for the more deconstructive route So that is one important thing to know, is that this entirely is within the realm of fiction. Just to make it totally clear. And that MR, that your distaste for the teacher character routes is just from personal preference, right? In how they handle it.
Yes. Yes, obviously, yeah.
It's like, It's like MR is like, I ain't falling back on that. I have it out because they suck.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in my case, I'm indifferent to it, although I guess I lean more on the against side. You were mentioning, I guess, your experiences with the teacher characters you've seen. In my case, I feel like one annoying part is that the VN always has to make them moe in some way. And so you have this more adultish, mature character, and they're like, the VN instead has to go out and show like, oh, well, see, in the classroom, they're like, oh, they're very put together and serious and stuff. And then you see them, whether like in the break room or you see them outside of school, and they're just, oh, they're so shy and demure and a mess in their private life, and you have to be the responsible one. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't have anything against that, but like, really? You gotta keep doing this to the teacher characters? Like the older, so they're supposed to be the more responsible, put together ones, you know? And instead, it's like, here we are trying to find a cutesy angle to it. And it's like, you can't just leave well enough alone.
The moment you describe it like that, I already I am reminded about the common route from Mashiro era symphony. Is exactly like that. It's a teacher that doesn't live up to the responsibility of guiding the students. So the class representative has to step up because she's so shy. And I don't know how to do it. Please do it for me. Because I'm so desperate. I'm like, no, don't. Especially in Mashiro era, you've established that you have a desperate loner teacher. And students have to take up the mantle. And then you introduce a principal that first thing she does, the principal of the school, is teases that teacher about being alone and desperate. I'm like, no, please.
MR's getting flashbacks.
That's literally the worst.
No.
Yeah, exactly. I have flashbacks. Oh my god. God damn it.
I would be fine. Well, like, again, in the realm of fiction, in visual novels, disclaimer.
Yeah.
It's not like I have anything against that sort of teacher heroine route moment. Although there's one other thing I want to mention is that if you're going to set up a heroine route involving main character and teacher, there's a lot more stranger angles you have to take to make it happen. It's weird because normally if you have a heroine route with like, typically it's going to be the main character and other classmates, maybe childhood friend sort of person, maybe a senpai or a kohai outside of the class. But for the most part, the daily life is going to naturally intersect with those characters. And the weirder part with trying to make a teacher heroine route work is that just even the premise and the continuation and all of that is going to be a bit more stilted and forced in terms of plot progression, I think. There aren't going to be naturally as many ways to make it happen as you do with the rich and well-worn roads that have already been inlaid for all of the typical character archetypes for heroines, whether you have tsundere classmates or kuderes or all of that stuff. We've already seen that stuff happen, and for the most part, those feel more natural. But for teacher romances, it's harder to pull off just inherently, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because of the environment differences, it's so much easier to sell the high school romance with fellow classmates or characters from similar school if they aren't attending the same class. Oftentimes, for example, they attend the same extracurricular activity in a club room, right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. With a teacher, you have to go one step beyond that and create an excuse in which they mingle and talk and interact. Unless you're even more peculiar about the circumstances and you go for, I'll mention it only briefly and only once, Euphoria route, and you literally trap characters together in a place they cannot escape from, and that's how we get teacher route there, I guess.
Death game, I guess.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Euphoria, that's not quite what people had in mind, I don't think.
Exactly, that's not necessarily the teacher route they envisioned, okay?
That's going more down the Nukike route, and...
But don't worry. My opinion didn't change. It's still the worst route there as well. So.
Oh, hurts even more. Okay.
Exactly. Even with all the excuses, it's still the worst one.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's just because of her character, or I don't know anything about Euphoria, so I mean, that's
that
something like that.
Is very disappointing and barely affects the story. I don't want to precisely say why and what if that's the case and or reveal any involvement, but yeah, she's probably the least involved with from all the crew.
Ouch. I mean, as much as I talked about, the teachers and being uninvolved, there's, Majikoi is a visual novel that has so much love and attention shown to its entire cast, and that includes the homeroom teacher, Umeko. And she has her own mini route, which is pretty much just a very short extension for, H scenes and stuff. And even then, she's developed pretty well in Majikoi, and she has a lot of great moments and times to shine, and a better personality in terms of what I was describing that I disliked. And even then, it still comes across as a stilted situation that feels more just to force the H scenes. And again, I'm not expecting a whole big route out of it for something that was just one tiny little branch off for that. But still, I mean, Majikoi is a great place as any is where you'll get great, well-developed characters across its entire massive cast. And even then, it was still... it still felt vaguely disappointing in the end for a variety of reasons.
I mean...
I know you didn't read Majikoi, so I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot responding or anything.
No, fair enough. I wanted to just say, at least she got a route. Right, because now we could transition to that character that became meme itself, Taiga from Fate Stay Night.
Taiga!
Like, this is interesting because I actually am quite fond of that character of Taiga, but I can't really consider her seriously. She was so much of a comic relief.
Even when she's being a teacher in the homeroom classroom, she's still a comedy relief character.
Exactly. Yeah, but at least she's the comic relief done very well. So even though I'm biased against teacher, she kind of, in my eyes, deserves a second chance, maybe someday.
Yeah. It helps. Well, I mean, one factor is that she's not a route heroine. She's just a character who can pop into the story and be suddenly serious and dramatic as the story requires. So it's not like a route where it has to focus and it has to create an entire structure around her. It's something where she can just be silly and added to scenes as needed, and every so often she can also be serious and give a little bit of information about what's going on in the story at large, or used as the plot requires. Which is the good way to have a character. That way you don't have to, the story doesn't have to unnaturally force her in because they have to. She can just be used as needed.
Absolutely. Although I wonder sometimes if the fact that I like Taiga may be because, one, she's often used also as a meta-narrative in the segments after reaching bad ends. And she was given a lot of character from those segments, even though, it's non-canon, obviously. But
was she?
The performance was so cool. That's one part. And the second part, she's not just a teacher to the protagonist. She's a close friend to the family. So this is beyond the confines of being just a teacher in VN to have a teacher route, right? So
Yes, that is true. She also has ties as a family friend of Emiya's. So that's an interesting angle to it too. I really think Taiga is, one of the better teacher characters that you see in VNs.
Exactly. Yeah. Although I wanted to bring one example from Grisaya, which features a school for very special needs students, and the principal and teacher of the school is a complete pushover, desperate loser. Let's call her like that. And I'm like, oh no, not again. But throughout the game, when you get some flashback scenes, there comes a maybe not classical teacher in a way one would assume, so not an educator from high school, but more of a mentor from military days and more of a survivalist. That character is one of my favorite in the entire Grisaya series. It's Kusakabe Asako. She's a military teacher to the protagonist, and how they develop that character and how she influences protagonist for and develops him. I mean, influences him for a long time, and how she develops him is just phenomenal writing. I love that character. So that's one teacher that gets my seal of approval. Asako, you deserve it.
Oh, that's good. So it's not just you hating every teacher character. It's on a case-by-case basis, and you can't help it that they're just all bad.
Exactly. It just so happens that more often than not, I'm disappointed. But this one gets double seal of approval.
Double seal of approval. Even though you started off not thinking it was going to be great?
Yep, exactly. I was thinking the first time the flashback started, I'm like, oh, not another teacher track. Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she grew on me, and then I really liked her. In some aspect, I feel like I like her more than some main characters, even from Grisaya. And I like all the main cast.
Oh, wow, impressive. Okay. I guess you could say on my end, one example, maybe, or lack of, I was thinking of was Katawa Shoujo. In which case, this is a story.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it takes place in a school. That's a huge point of emphasis. And there are a few teacher characters, but they honestly aren't that involved into the plot. They kind of are. They make appearances and they often talk, and at times they're an important part of the plot. But you never feel like they're a main character. They always feel like supporting characters at best. And I think that's fine. I'm struggling to think of if, the addition of a more prominent teacher character, or if they had a bigger role in the story, if that would have made Katawa Shoujo any better. Or if it's just a matter of, the VN knowing its strengths and sticking to that and just not going with it because that's not what's needed. And for a character drama focused title like Katawa Shoujo, that's probably for the best, right? I'm happy about it. It's not like I ever see a point of criticism wishing that you could have seen more out of other characters, because you do. And in fact, I feel like maybe the addition would have taken away from the main characters. Because now that I think about it, I kind of started to feel like that with some of Lily's family. I don't know. Other people like them, but anyway, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, and not all the teachers are involved in the same way, because if I remember correctly, the arts teacher was way more involved in that dedicated character route than others.
Yep.
I remember from Katawa Shoujo.
Rinsroute, the artist.
Yeah, exactly.
For the art teacher, yeah, of course. So just being added as needed. Then again, being a character-focused VN, Katawa Shoujo doesn't need to include routes like a typical eroge might, where it's focusing more on the slice of life, school life, and you have the checklist of characters to interact with and heroines and whatnot. So, I mean, that Katawa Shoujo did have that flexibility. I guess that's something that counts in their favor.
True. Although now that you brought up the idea of side characters, teachers, I remember that in Little Witch Romanesque, racing sim about you being the teacher, teaching two students, and they feature a lot of side characters that were also teachers. And I felt like all of them brought up something unique to the table. So in that setting, you are teaching magic, and you are the magister or archmage or something like that, and you're teaching to new students about magic, but you are not expert in all kinds. So you needed to bring up, for example, a teacher for healing magic and a dedicated priest, right? Maybe you needed to search through archaeology and ancient ruins, so you needed a teacher about that. And I felt like that is super cool VM that showcased that teachers can be more, and they can be involved in routes, like you mentioned with Katawa Shoujo, not necessarily take center stage and, I don't know, another insert loser teacher into the title.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. You know what? We need more loser teachers. That's a unique angle. we have there's
one.
It's expected for them to be stern and serious and effective, or maybe the silly, goofy, goober ones. We need some that are pathetic. I want the class talking back to him.
Oh my god. Oh god. Oh my god.
Okay, maybe I'm just being mean.
Maybe. Although, I wanted also to transition to another interesting point, and why I used Little Witch Romanesque as a stepping point is I actually tend to like teachers in VNs if you're the teacher, the protagonist. So, and one example I wanted to bring here was the Little Witch. In Little Witch Romanesque, there were smaller routes in which you as a teacher could pursue the other teachers. And that felt super interesting. Like, wait, why isn't more of that angle? But then again, I've read Nyan Cafe Macchiato, in which you were the teacher, you had a teacher route, and it was also the worst one. So now I know, don't do it.
Giving those teachers a bad name, man. You're tarnishing their reputation.
But don't worry, they did something very unique in Nyan Cafe Macchiato. That was not a loser teacher. It was absolutely the reverse. It was Turbo Dominatrix.
It was what?
I don't know how to... Turbo Dominatrix.
Oh boy, okay.
So I specifically did not include any screenshots with that character, but rather the students. Because I couldn't find anything appropriate, okay? Let's say it like that.
Oh dear. That's a brave new area to explore with characterization in teachers. I'm not really sure how that would mix. Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
Okay.
You had one job. You could redeem teacher routes in a VN in which you are also a teacher, and that was still the worst. What the hell?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, that's a very interesting point to end on, MR. Thanks for leaving us all with that image.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I'm not sure if that would scare off more students or it'd bring more students to our class.
That's true. It might be sickened by curious kind of approach for some.
Jeez. But that is a wrap-up point for this episode. Thank you all for listening. Teachers and VNs, I don't know. I feel like the potential is there. I'm not really sure if there are any truly good ones, though, or if it's on a case-by-case basis, or if that's just the sort of thing the reader is into, but I don't know. I don't really experiment too much with those kinds of VNs that would have that as an option, so I can't say I'm the most experienced, so I'm very interested to see what everyone else thinks as well.
I mean, Listen, there was a reason I came here negative, so I still hold up hope. Maybe someday I'll read a high school setting VNs in which the teacher route is the best. Or maybe I'm very naive and that will never happen. But thanks to all our listeners, and venture out.
Venture out.